Without doubts, I think it's by far the best league in Europe.
How dare you score like that in the Premier League? Mission accomplished in the Premier League. The American.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Premier League show, Match Week 4, brought to you here by American Scouser TV. I am your host tonight. It's Gally, and with me tonight from, I think, what I'm going to guess is, and I'm sure we're going to get an update quickly, a steamy Chicago. Our very own Turkish one, Timucin, filling in for Mr. Paul Bickler. What's going on?
Not too shabby. Yes, I was saving it for the live broadcast later on. We're going to record tonight. But yes, it is hot as can freaking be. It's almost torturous hot. But, you know, I'm here to fill in for Bickler over here. I don't know where the bar is. Going to have to jump over it or crawl underneath it and stuff. But we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I don't think you have too much to worry about there when trying to live up to Bickler. And the truth of the matter is, Paul's not with us tonight because he is at a bachelor party in Montana. And I'm actually saying that correctly, if I got it correct. He actually traveled with friends to a bachelor party to like a remote area of the world.
You know what?
That
the funny
sounds
thing is,
like a Bickler move.
You guys had talked about that he was going to a bachelor party. And I knew he was going to be a bachelor party. That's why he's not on the podcast tonight's live episode as well as this. But then I saw his Instagram accounts, and there were like photos, like he's out in the middle of nowhere, like dead carcasses and stuff. I'm like, where is this bachelor party?
I was thinking to myself, like, you know, some people go to like Vegas, other dudes go to New Orleans. You know, I've even heard of people going to Nashville, but that's normally more like mixed couple parties where they're traveling as like big groups with both sides of the wedding party, not just the groomsmen. In this case, I guess they decided they wanted to head to Montana. Like that to me is like going on vacation where you go camping to the point where you actually like hunt for your own food and cook it yourself. And to me, that's not vacation. That's work. Like if I have to cook everything and do all the work and pack up all the stuff and put together the bedroom and put together the tent and make sure that it stays dry, that sounds like a lot more work than I am in for. But let's get into match week 4 with the Premier League. Very interesting week. 10 fixtures on docket. We'll stay and talk about a few of them, including what I believe was the match of the week, Arsenal versus Manchester United, the last match of the weekend. But before we get to those, when you look at this as a whole, any one result here or anything kind of jump out at you, either as something that surprised you or kind of a shock result in your mind?
I mean, it has to be Forest, right? I mean, we know Chelsea's a hot mess and there's a lot of unknown there, but I mean, you did not expect him to. I mean, you knew Forest would give him a fight because, I mean, they almost did the same to United. So they are dangerous on the counter. That's actually a team like I personally worry about, for example, when, you know, Liverpool plays them at home. But I did not see them stealing that away. And even watching the game, I only watched the second half of that one. Once I found out, I was like, oh, let's go watch this comedy kind of a thing. And yeah, I mean, it's shocking that Chelsea can be so bad.
Yeah, the Chelsea Forest was definitely one of my surprises of the week. I did not think Forest would be able to keep a clean sheet against Chelsea. I wasn't so sure Chelsea would keep a clean sheet against Forest with the way they've been scoring. But Forest went in, had a great game plan. You know, Gary O'Neill had him set up right. You know, was in there with a chance to win at all times. And I think the biggest piece, I'm sorry, it was Steve Cooper, the Forest manager. But he had him set up well and in a really good place. I think when it comes to Chelsea, they're struggling to have an identity. And I think when you're struggling, you can't do things like miss open sitters.
Yeah.
And you know, Nicholas Jackson's really having a hard time, obviously, since his big money move from Villarreal. He's a young player. He looks like he's got skills. I don't know that he was ready for that move yet to be like their talisman and their front line top goal scorer. So it's going to be interesting to see. I don't know if it's as much a shock result as it was the result was shocking. And that's Tottenham 5, Burnley 2. And it's just because I thought Burnley was a little better than this, just from an organization standpoint. I thought that they had a little bit more talent, being the team that won the championship in the manner in which that they did last year. And honestly, I didn't think Tottenham would be this good this quick. And especially without Harry Kane. How good they are going forward is really surprising. But when you look at their roster, they really do have a lot of attacking players. I mean, this weekend they started Son through the middle, Solomon on the left, Kulishevsky on the right, and Madison behind him. When you have Basuma and Sarr playing at the best they've ever played in their Premier League careers behind that, you do have quite a formidable attack. And we know what Son can do on his day, and he did it, on Saturday. So that was a little shocking to me, a little surprising. What were your overall thoughts on Tottenham? And do you think their attack is legit? We won't go so far as to say they're legit yet.
Yeah, I mean, their attack definitely is. I knew that was going to be a high scoring game. It's two teams that are kind of counting on outscoring the opponent by playing an open game. The difference is Tottenham have the players and the quality to do it and to finish and to get the goals. I am debating how long Burnley will go on with this experiment and eventually give in and say, hey, we're going to have to kind of like tighten things down a bit if you want to start getting some points, because they are like just leaking goals defensively. And I think that's because they play so open. I mean, when they came and we were talking about, it's like similar to like Leeds, right? Like there's like really exciting to watch, but I don't know, like if it is exciting when you're getting pummeled at home by Tottenham. And Tottenham has a lot of speed. I think Madison has been a good fit over there in terms of kind of like pulling the strings. But along the same lines, I feel like you stop Madison, I think you stop their attack for the most part. I know they have a lot of speed up top, but everything goes through like Madison's passing. So I think if you stop that, if you put pressure on the ball, you will score against Tottenham. But they're like probably like the most fun team to watch right now because of the style they play. But I think they have a game in them where the shoe is on the other foot and they lose 5-2 or something like that because they're starting to leak goals because it's very open in the back. But I think I agree. I mean, nobody thought Tottenham would gel this fast and be able to rack up points. I mean, in our panel show, even Spurs fans were like, hey, let's start a rebuild. Let's put the pieces together, especially after losing Kane. And then top four would be a dream, but let's get to the top again and get out of this like middle of the table crap.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Tottenham will be an interesting one to watch. Two teams that are not interesting to watch at all are Sheffield United and Everton. And I think I could speak for all Sheffield United and Everton fans to saying that 2-2 draw will probably be one of the more eventful and exciting performances that either of their sides will put in all year. And they still had to leave that completely disappointed because both had opportunities to win it. So let's start from the Everton perspective. You go on the road. You finally take a lead through an early goal. And really should have been up by more. I mean, they ultimately had really dominated the play to start the first 20, 25 minutes. And then they give up the goal to Cameron Archer. Really nice, cool finish. He scores the goal and levels it. If you're Everton at that point, do you start holding on just looking for points? Or do you think they should be coming out? Because they got a lot of flack, I think, from their supporters for their approach after they went up 1-0. As a former defender, how do you see a 1-0 lead when you know your team can't score again if you concede? Is it enough?
And I think that's the key. I mean, when you ask for the upset, apart from the Forest score, Everton scoring goals is probably like the second biggest upset concept of the week. So I think you score a goal as a team that can't score goals and you try to get every point you can. Everton is in a semi-decent situation when it comes to relegation because there are a few other teams that are just as bad, if not worse. But on the same line, Sheffield is one of them. Stealing a point from them away is probably more of a win for Everton than I think it is for Sheffield. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that was kind of where I was going with this too. You know, we were having that argument or discussion in our Discord channel. You know, is it 3 points dropped? Would either team sign off for a point at this point? I said, you know, I think both teams would take a point because it's match week 4 and you have to accumulate something. And neither had gotten anything yet. I think Sheffield United being at home and the fact that they had a first half lead and all the momentum up 2-1 and opportunities to score after that they didn't take, I think really hurts them. In Everton's case, they probably feel like they stole a point for the fact that they were trailing. Excuse me, they came back, and then to have the late heroics from Pickford and the double save.
Yep.
And I know we make a lot of fun of them. The 2 saves at the end of the match are top level goalkeeping. I mean, that's a big time play and a big time spot. And I was even saying, I almost found what was more impressive than the 2 saves was that he had the composure after the second save to use his leg and touch the ball away from the oncoming attacker. Like he was still completely within himself to basically win the match. Now, then he started making winky faces and smiling and trying to look like he just like I think someone had to remind him, stupid, it's 2-2, not 3-2. You didn't secure a victory. You secured a draw. And we're Everton, and this team is terrible. And you know, you said Sheffield United might be worse. I think Luton's really, really bad. And I think Sheffield United is not much better. And from there, I think everybody else is fighting for the next 2 spots. Like, I genuinely think they're the 2 teams going down, and then there'll be another team to join them. And we've already talked about Burnley, and now we're talking about Everton. So this really could be one of those interesting seasons where, you know, there's 5, 6, 7 teams that are just really kind of porous, and everybody else is kind of strong. So,
but I think that's why it's a bigger loss for Sheffield. Because they're home. I think that's like basically the deciding factor there. To Everton, it's a point gained and we score goals. It's something positive, finally, kind of a deal. For Sheffield, I mean, if they win this, I mean, these games are going to be crucial, right? The ones they play amongst each other is going to be crucial. So, I mean, and Sheffield having lost to City only 2-1 at home will be pretty darn disappointed to draw afterwards with Everton at home. Because, you know, you would think after that performance, and they lost to Crystal Palace 1-0 at home. But, you know, when you look at Everton, they've had like easy games where they haven't gotten points. Like they played Wolves, they played Fulham, you know, like points, games that they should have grabbed points from. Like their next fixtures against Arsenal, for example. So it gets tougher. So when these 2 guys meet, like when I say these 2 guys, like when these teams meet, I should say, like Luton Town and Sheffield and Everton, Wolves, Burnley, those 3 points are huge. It's almost like 6 points because you know your opponent is not going to be getting a lot of points from other teams.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think to have a 6-pointer this earlier in the season lets you know exactly what type of a relegation battle we might be looking at come the second half. Speaking of another couple sides, maybe ones that are a little bit more in the surprise conversation of the European football landscape this season in the Premier League. Brighton takes on Newcastle in Brighton. It's getting to that point where I don't know that you can totally understand or know what you're going to expect from Brighton on a week-to-week basis. They can be the Brighton that plays free-flowing football and hits you for 5. They can be the Brighton that gets beaten 5-1 like the side last year at home against Everton. That made no sense whatsoever.
Yep.
Or they can go out and really put in a pretty, for them, pragmatic display like they did against Newcastle. They weren't high flying. Ferguson gets the goals, none of them overly beautiful or pretty in their normal kind of De Zerbi-like fashion. But they did just enough. So I'll go here with this. Brighton 3, Newcastle 1. Is that more speaking to how well Brighton played, or how much Newcastle looked like they still were suffering from a hangover from getting punched in the mouth by Liverpool the week before? Because to me, it never looked like Newcastle got out of first gear in this entire match.
Yeah, right. That was similar to like the Liverpool Villa game. Like they started early and then they just cruised. And both fixtures, I guess. But I thought this was going to be like a really exciting fixture to watch between Brighton and Newcastle. And yeah, it was kind of like, this is under control. I think Newcastle is a slightly broken and disappointed team right now, because I think they're realizing that there is still a lot more room to go before they compete with the likes of City and Liverpool and Arsenal and stuff like that. So, I mean, you could be a Newcastle fan and look at your schedule and say, if you were Villa, or, I don't know, let's say you were Brentford or somebody like that, you can kind of look at your initial fixtures and say, hey, man, we've had the toughest schedule over here. We played City, we played Liverpool, Brighton away. So I know we don't have a lot of points, but it's good. The rest of the schedule is easy. I don't think Newcastle is in that situation. This was a team that we went to the Champions League. What's the next step, right? And I think they're realizing that that's a huge step. It's not just like going from that 4th, 5th area to 1 and 2 is a huge step, and they're nowhere near. And I think, that Liverpool game, the way they gave those 3 points up, and then they kind of come out over here really flat, they fall behind, and they never looked like they were threatened to come back. I think the rest of their schedule is easier. You will see Newcastle bouncing back. But the moment I saw the Champions League draw, I was like, this team is done. I don't think they're going to get top 4, because in that group, I don't think Newcastle can battle midweek and then have enough juice to go again on the weekend. They're not used to it, number one. And I think, a team that's Champions League is so new for them that it will be the whole thing. So the moment that first game is over for the Champions League, the rest of the week is almost like, Champions League game is over. And then it's kind of hard to get up for the league game. So I think Newcastle, probably for most of us, it was kind of like the favorite to make top 4 in some ways. I think they look like they're slightly in trouble. They have the money to add or whatever, but I feel like they will bounce back because their schedule is going to get a lot easier and there's quality. But once the Champions League starts, regardless of their schedule, I see that team struggling.
Yeah, I mean, they had a tough week. I mean, you get literally Darwined in like they did with 2 late daggers. You hear about it for 4 days straight, and then you get the news that you're playing in the toughest group in the Champions League, arguably in like 4 seasons. I mean, they literally don't have a break or a breather the entire time. Brutal road matches, brutal head-to-head matches, just tough competition. And I think what it does is it will probably benefit the club in the long run, because they'll get great gates. There'll be great nights at St. James's Park. There'll be a lot of revenue. They're also going to play against really good competition, but I'm with you. I think this pushes them to be the outside favorite or the outside contender to get into top 4. And it might even open the door for teams like Spurs or Brighton or someone to try to battle with United for the 4th spot. I genuinely believe City, Arsenal, and Liverpool are the top 3 teams in the Premier League on skill, manager, talent, the whole 9. And I think there's a small group of teams trying to fight their way in. And, got to give them credit for how they've played. Maybe even West Ham can find their way into that argument, looking at things saying we belong there if things work out right for us. But I still think that's about 4 or 5 teams. Speaking of one of those top 3 teams that I mentioned, Arsenal won themselves a match yesterday against United, or United lost themselves a match. Another match littered in VAR controversy, littered in player controversy, coaching controversy. I'd even argue selection dilemmas and controversy amongst these sides. So let's start with Arsenal and United there. We can start there, Timucin. Who does this result talk more about? Does it speak more to Arsenal finding a way to get 3 points at home and keeping, touching distance to City? Or is it more about United and the fact that it looked like they might steal a match on the road they had no business winning, that they then decided to implode, and then in classic United fashion somehow make the back page stories even worse 2 hours after the match? It's unbelievable what they do. So who's it more about?
And then more drama gets added on afterwards, right? With the whole Anthony deal and stuff. So
I forgot about that. Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's United. It's just the fact that United is going to be in shambles when the 90 minutes end and you got Maguire and Evans as your center back pairing. That cannot. I mean, if I'm a United fan, I'm looking at that. Well, I know my brother's a United fan, and he's looking at that. He's like, "What is this, Leicester City? What the hell is going on over here? Like, how do we end up with these two guys as center back?" And I think that's a huge, huge problem for them. And I think it's just it's just sign of like a lot of problems on that team. And they have quality. They have some players because they spend a lot of money. And I mean, we'll see, the Holland from wish.com. We'll see, what he does. If the name being close is good enough to perform just as good, kind of a deal. But, I don't know if so they will get points, right? Because you have some guys out there that can create something out of nothing. So you can play like crap, and Rashford can come in from the left, cut in, shoot to the corner and get you a goal and get you a point, get you 3 points. You got refs, you got a lot going on for you in that sense. But to be able to do it on a week in and week out basis, they just do not have it. And you look at that, like I say, I always go to, my brother is a United fan, but he's not a fanatic. Like he can, well, I guess he is because he was saying some stuff during the game. I was like, come on, man. But like Fernandez is your captain. I think that says a lot about the leadership on that team. And like you have a petulant guy that quit on you in that Liverpool game. He literally quit. That guy is your captain. And we were, talking about this, on WhatsApp as they're watching the game with my brother. And we could not even come up with an alternative. And I think that says a lot about a team. We had a similar situation in Liverpool. You look at like City. These teams, you can find multiple captains, maybe not, we were trying to replace Henderson and, for example, Milner, maybe not at the same caliber, but you got so many guys who captain their national teams. There's some leadership there. You look at United, you're like, how is this guy the captain? And then you look around, who is going to be the captain? There really is nobody else that you can be like, hey, you know what? You should be the leader of this team. So I think there's a lot of issues. Obviously, then the Sancho deal comes out and then the Anthony deal comes out. They already had the Greenwood drama. And so I think it says a lot more about United than anything else. For Arsenal, I think it says more that they are more vulnerable. They're nowhere near City yet. And they spent a lot of money to close that gap. I don't know if the Havertz experiment is a good one. You can say time, but everybody said the same thing about Chelsea. How much time does a guy need in different clubs? But I feel like Arsenal still is nowhere near City, and they have a little bit of a hangover, I feel like, from last year, because really that was kind of like a punch in the guts to lose that lead and then give it up to City. So you're starting this season already slightly behind with that Fulham game. I think Arsenal still has chinks in the armor, but you look at this game and how it unfolded. I see, the storyline to me is United. If we thought they will battle for top 3, top 4. Ten Hag has got this thing under control now. He's building something. It's like that building is on really shaky grounds. It's like like it's cardboard, so it can come down any second. Is I think what we saw.
Yeah, I agree. I think it speaks more about United from the standpoint that at 1-1, you thought to yourself, if this match ends 1-1, it's probably a fair result. Neither team really deserved to win it. Rashford got his goal. Arsenal played better, but not that great. Saka really had another really pedestrian, mediocre performance. I thought there's 2 or 3 VAR instances that come into play, maybe 4 if you count the one in stoppage time, but the first one obviously is the non-soccer red card. I know, United fans were going crazy. To me, that's not a red card. It looks like a red card when you slow it down and his ankle, and it's full studs on ankle. I hate to say it, the fact that it's on Fernandez probably hurts. No, it's like Trent fouling Gordon and questioning whether or not he threw himself to the ground like a sack of potatoes, because that's what he's done in the past, and that's what referees think about. So, I think that helps Saka in that play. Did you see in live time the Havertz, when Havertz is fouled and Anthony Taylor award the penalty? Did you happen to be watching? So he awards the penalty there. I don't know if it was a penalty at the moment. I see the contact. I see Anthony Taylor where he's standing. Did you ever in a million years think Anthony Taylor was going to take, like, that they were going to send him to the monitor, or that, because there was a little bit of contact, it looked like. It wasn't much, but it looked like a tiny bit of contact. So I thought that would end up standing, and they end up sending Taylor to the monitor. Funny enough, after Mike Dean said he couldn't send Anthony Taylor to the monitor because he was such a good guy. And Anthony Taylor comes out and wipes off the penalty. What did you think of that moment and that usage of VAR?
I don't know. Like, I might be the only one who's thinking this, but I thought that was a penalty. I mean, watching it live, the moment it happened, you were like, whoa, like, just got like sandwiched in there. And when you really slow it down, yes, there is no contact, but this is when we punish players for not feeling the contact and going down. Is Havertz does not lift it. I mean, I'm really against that, because if we want the diving and stuff out of the game, you cannot punish a guy because he tried to not get contact out of the tackle. If it's Sterling, if it's Kane or somebody like that, they are initiating the contact, kind of like leaving their foot in there, making sure they do get the contact and they get the penalty. Just because he kind of tried to get his foot out of the way, for him to be punished for that, I think is kind of wrong. And not only that, clear and obvious. Can we get this definition somewhere? Because I don't understand how that was clear and obvious. When we watch it in slow motion several times, and it's not that clear and obvious, if it's a penalty or not. I thought, and he had to give it live, because I think anybody who saw it live was like, whoa, like, holy cow, that is a horrible tackle. Because I think they are impeding, contact or not, they are impeding his path to the ball. And that's why I think it should be a penalty. I was shocked that it was overturned, to be honest with you. I think you have a good point. I was shocked that they called him over. Because once they call him over, it's going to be overturned. But I was shocked that he was called over, because I feel like they make such a big stink of this. Oh, it was wrong, but it wasn't clear and obvious kind of thing. How they consider that, I know it's United, but I don't know how they consider that to be clear and obvious and get it overturned. I don't think that was the right decision for me.
Yeah, I was completely surprised, to be honest with you. I thought it was a penalty in real time. I said it in the Discord channel. I got in a little argument about it. Others were calling it a dive, saying it should be a booking. I thought that was even more harsh. For me, it was no way clear and obvious. I don't understand how a referee seeing something that close, calling it on the field, and then being asked to come look at it. And I'm not sure what he saw at the monitor or didn't see that he thought he would see that would change his mind from his decision, 2 minutes earlier. So didn't love it. The match goes on. It's still 1-1. United brings on Garnacho, and, he makes a great run, runs off Gabriel's shoulder, goes in one-on-one with the keeper, slots it home. United think they've taken a 2-1 lead. They're going to smash and grab it. I swear it's a minute after the celebration ends, you find out that there's a VAR review going on for a possible potential offside. I'll be honest. I saw about 8 replays of it, and every time I came to the conclusion he was still onside and Gabriel was playing him onside at first. And then when they showed the last angle and they started drawing out their lines. I still don't know if it was like, again, if we have a rule that we use VAR for clear and obvious, that's clear and obvious.
See, that's different though. I feel like, I mean, we've talked about this before. I think Dutch league has a right. Just draw the line thicker, so we don't have to look at like whose shoelaces are sticking out and whose shoelaces are not sticking out in that situation. But I think in the offside thing, there should be no gray area. I mean, you draw the line. If it's past the line, it's past the line. There is no. I mean, how they draw the line, you could argue and see, hey, is that line the same?
That's what it felt like for me. It felt like they were drawing the line off of one player's arm, the one who couldn't score with his arm, and drawing it off the other player's foot, who could defend with any part of his body he wants to in that situation. It felt very arbitrary. I was fine with the decision because it took a goal away from United, and that made me laugh. But I really was kind of like, I was a little miffed by that. I got to admit, it was a very strange one for me. So we fast forward from there. We get into extra time. United is forced to bring on Harry Maguire when Lisandro Martinez goes down with what appeared to be a pretty serious foot injury. I don't know if it was the foot. It seemed like he was holding the same foot that he had broken last year. So I don't know if it's a recurring injury. It'll be interesting to see what they say. I didn't see any reports today of what happened. So I'm sure some news will come out from there. So in comes the always hated Harry Maguire, vilified by both his manager and home supporters, still part of the side, still making lots of money, and probably still the most qualified person to be the captain of United, to be honest. I'll answer your question earlier. If you answered the question, it's Luke Shaw, he's hurt, and Harry Maguire, and nobody wants him. And then probably Tom Heaton, their third keeper. But the he clearly comes in. He's got to do his job. He plays for 10 minutes, and Lindelof has to come off, and on comes Johnny Evans. And I have to ask you, when you saw Johnny Evans being prepared, do you believe, like I did, that Ten Hag looked at one of his assistants and said, "Who the hell is this? And why is he playing?"
I was talking about in the morning show this today. I really liked how they signed Evans without getting a lot of backlash. Evans was this old man who was working out with us. Like, he's trying there to lose some weight. And then he was like, "Can I just run with you guys during the drills?" And they were like, "Yeah, come on in during practice." They acted like he was there until he's finding a team. Clearly nobody wants Evans. So they were like, "You know what? We need to sign him back anyway. Why don't you just stay?" And then they signed the dude. And you would think you would never see him, and lo and behold, he comes against Arsenal, mind you, like the game of the match of the week. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, going back to what we're talking about, I think it says a lot about, like, where they're at as a team and where the money is going and what's being done with it. I mean, hanging on to Maguire, I know they couldn't find a suitable partner, and they probably didn't want to cut their losses, but it's like, you made the mistake, man. You got to cut the losses and then, convert whatever you can. Even if you get like 30 for him, 40 for him, whatever, you can go get like a young center back so that you're not trotting out Maguire, who clearly doesn't fit your system. And I think he will do well at another team, personally, like a team that doesn't play such a high line and puts Maguire in like a 1v1 all the time. I think Maguire will do well. So he's valuable to another team, but everybody in the world knows that, United is wants to get rid of him, and they don't want him. So obviously they can't get anything for him. But yeah, the whole Evans thing was just comedy. And that's when, we were texting back and forth with my brother. Yeah, I had a lot of fun during those 10 minutes. I can tell you that, because from him, crying out with joy, sending messages for that Garnacho goal. And can I say, by the way, if Sancho was playing, he'd be on. I'm just kidding. But
we'll get there.
But And then I even saw, when I saw it live, I was like, was he on or was he off? And he's like, I don't know yet. And then they draw the line, he's off. And then you see that comedy. And then the end of the game comes over and you're like, whoa. And as a United fan, like I say, you have to shake your head and say, where are we headed? I think is the big question.
Yeah, and I know United gets all upset and angry about the potential offsides on one of the two goals. On I think the Rice goal, they claim there was a player in an offsides position, impeding Anana and in the line of sight or whatever the heck it was.
I think they were talking
so
about that foul, but it looks like Evans is wrestling the dude down to me when I look at it. But
yeah, honestly, I think they were just grasping at straws because it was just such a brutal way to take it, just a complete gut punch. But enough about United, because we got to talk about folks in the top half of the table, which is something that United can't say about themselves.
Yeah, that's right.
So, quick look here, quick overview on the top half of the table. City just keeps rolling. 4 on the spin, 3 without their manager, 11-4, 2 against. Just, really, really impressive. I got to be honest, especially with, dealing with a few injuries and betting in a few new players. But we've come to expect that from City. We expect it after January. Thank you very much. It would be nice if you drop some points like you usually do. Spurs, Liverpool, West Ham, Arsenal round out, that next group all on 10 points, and then Brighton behind them on 9. We talked a little bit about Spurs earlier and kind of their surprise. How surprised are you with what West Ham is doing? How sustainable is it based on the fact that they do have European football as they're part of the Europa League?
And I think that's where things will kind of start tapering down for them, right? I think they had a couple of huge wins. The one against Brighton, obviously away. But you look at that game, and it's just a team that countered really well and was clinical, not a team that outplayed Brighton. You didn't watch that game and say, oh, West Ham is so much better than Brighton. I mean, I didn't, but you said, man, they can really counter and they can be really clinical. You got to be careful against this team on the counter. I think it's the same scenario, similar to what I was, not seen over here, Newcastle, in terms of once the European fixtures start, I think the lack of depth, I think, becomes an issue, especially with, like the injuries and stuff like that. But West Ham has to be extremely happy to be up there right now, because, I mean, for them, they're banking in points before Europe and that heavy schedule really starts. I mean, Tottenham is obviously has to be pleasantly surprised, especially, seeing their schedule. There were some tough games in there. I don't know, now United, I don't know, we don't know if it's a tough game or not, but the way they played, I know Spurs fans are pleasantly surprised in terms of how fast it has kind of started. I think they will have some stumbling blocks. It'll be important to see how they react, but yeah, I think West Ham has to be a team along with Liverpool too. I think they have to be pleased. You can put Liverpool in a similar category as Tottenham. I think that with so much change, especially for Liverpool in the middle of the field, everybody in that middle is new, kind of a deal. It's important to rack up points, ugly or not. And some of Liverpool's points have been ugly and tough, playing with 10 men and stuff like that. But these 3 points are huge now, because I see the same thing about Tottenham. As they kind of gel, they will only get better. City, meanwhile, I mean, talking about some refereeing decisions, I don't understand how the hell that was a goal and not off. I just do not understand the rules anymore, apparently, at the end of the first half. I don't know if it's because of, I want to ask you, actually, you think it's lack of Pep's presence on the sideline, where he will not need a translator to get his message across? That's, they looked very meh playing that game. It was not like a machine that we're used to seeing City. They kind of were going through the motions, and you can kind of see they will really miss Kevin De Bruyne's clinical passes, creating something out of nothing, suddenly getting that ball to Haaland where he wants it, and Gundogan just showing up with surprise goals and stuff like that. Because that game really, until that second goal, looked like it could end up being a draw.
Yeah, I definitely think they definitely miss having Pep on the sideline. I just think they miss having his maniacal presence and his just
Kicking
sheer
the ass.
determination, looking for perfection at all times. Like he's the guy up 4-1 screaming at players on the sideline with 3 minutes to go for
Yeah.
kicking a ball to the wrong player in a situation. Um, I think City will be better, and I also think I think they will miss De Bruyne. I think they can get by without him. I think that they have a lot of things going for them, in a lot of good ways. I also think that they have a pretty thin side, and you see it when you see them line up. Like when they're
Yeah.
missing a few players, Grealish doesn't play on the weekend. Now they're down another attacker. They sold Cole Palmer, so they're down another senior level attacker. Um, they started a kid that they signed the Thursday before in a
Yeah.
Premier League match. I mean, that to me speaks volumes about where they're at as a side. And I think that they're a side in transition. And I think anyone who thinks that they are like primed to win the treble again has got another thing coming. I think they I think they will go for the Premier League title as their number one goal because it's a war of attrition. And I think they can win that the easiest. I think the Champions League would be a huge, huge ask, even with the weak group that they got. Down towards the bottom half of this, Palace, Brentford, Forest, Villa. How many of those four teams can finish somewhere between 7th and 10th?
Brentford and Villa, I think, are the ones that will stay on the top of this because Brentford can score goals. I was actually shocked that they did not win against Bournemouth, to be honest with you, at home. I thought that would be a game that Brentford would win. Forest had some, I mean, nobody saw them taking like 3 points from Chelsea. Who did they beat? Everton?
Forest beat Chelsea.
No, I mean, before. I can't remember
forgot.
now, but I thought it was
Yeah.
Everton. But like I say, it's let me look at their schedule real quick. But yeah, I mean, I think Forest is banking the points right now. They beat Sheffield. I'm sorry, they beat Sheffield at home, so they are kind of like getting the points they need to have a comfortable rest of the season. I think when it comes to Forest, they will cause a lot of trouble. They're a team that can really counter. But at the same time, even against Chelsea. Even when they were sitting back, it looked like, I mean, Chelsea had no answers, but a more organized team looked like they could break that defense down. But I don't think Forest will end up on that top half. But because you would think eventually, like Newcastle or United or one of them will bump them down just because, like I said, they have that quality to get you some points.
So we look at the bottom half of the table. We start with United, Chelsea, Fulham, and Newcastle. So I'll kind of flip it around. Of those four teams, if you told me on the last question, 2 teams were going to drop into this, and Brentford and Villa were going to stay up. So which 2 teams find their way onto the first page? So ultimately, is Chelsea going to be staying down here with the bottom half of the table? Or does that Chelsea side play their way into the upper half and it's United? It's one of the Uniteds, Newcastle or Manchester, that finishes the season bottom half of the table.
That's a tough one. I mean, normally
I get paid the big bucks to ask the tough questions.
I will turn the tables on later tonight when we record a live show. So I would say I'm going to say Newcastle and United right now. I know United has a lot of that drama, but the games they've lost, at least they have not lost games that you look at the schedule and be like, how the hell? Like the Chelsea losing at home to Forest. I mean, they lost to Arsenal away and Spurs away. I think you can live with that, knowing there's a gap between you and those teams. I mean, the future does not look bright either, but it doesn't for Chelsea as well. And, Chelsea can have more problems. Both of them have people that can just win you points. But it feels like United has a bit more of an organization to take advantage of that. Chelsea, aside from Sterling, I don't think, and you can kind of tell when Sterling gets the ball, but it's like, like way back in the day when Coutinho got the ball at Liverpool, we were like, something gonna happen? Oh no! And then Sterling gets it. If something happens, it's when Sterling has the ball. Whereas United has a couple of ways, they have Fernandez and stuff like that to distribute the ball. So I think if anybody climbs that, I think it will be United. You might have all three of them coming out of this, but it will be squeaking in at like 10 or 9 or something like that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. So when we look down the bottom of the table, obviously Luton and Burnley with a match played less than everyone else. That match needs to be made up. What a big match that's going to be, because there'll at least be somebody getting points there, and if one of them got 3 points, how big would that be? Most likely Burnley, because I'm not sure Luton's going to get 3 points all season. What you've seen so far, which 3 of these teams between 15 and 20 do you have destined for the drop?
I think it's going to be, part of me really wants Everton and Sean Douche to hit that bottom, but I think I have Luton and Burnley, and I think Sheffield United. I think Everton find a way to get out of that. I don't know if it's because of Peto or just because they do have Sean Dyche, who can sometimes at least figure out. I'm shocked at how poor their defending is, because I thought at least Sean would get him a single point, even if they can't score, by stopping other teams. The way they're leaking goals is kind of shocking. I don't know if they'll get that figured out, but I think my heart says Sheffield stays instead of Everton, but I think Everton find a way out again, and it's going to be it's going to be like the last 2 seasons. It's going to go till the end.
Yeah, I feel like in some way Bournemouth and Wolves are just being given like an absolute lifeline with how poor these 3 teams are that came up from the championship. I think Everton as well. I think all 3 of those sides could be in real trouble. There's still parts of me that feel like at any given time, like Palace can go on an 8-match winless streak where they get 2 draws and they can get sucked into these type of relegation battles as well as they play at times. But I think Hodgson sets them up well enough to probably acquire enough points. I think Bournemouth has looked much better in their overall play than their 2 points have awarded them.
I agree.
But then again, that could be a real curse because the manager has them, attacking sides like Liverpool, which is great when it looks like you're going to go up 2-0 5 minutes in. But when you don't, they pick you apart as the match goes on. So we'll transition away from this week's match and take a look at something that came out yesterday post-match after the Arsenal and United match. Eric Ten Hag was asked in his post-match press conference to why Jadon Sancho, a healthy scratch, was not featured or even on the substitutes bench. He had some choice words to say, including kind of criticizing and, as Roy Keane said, demonstranizing. I think he said, he made up a word. Basically said that he was out of line for talking the way he did about a player, that's a private matter. You talk about players on the pitch, not in training. If you do that, you're just trying to really send a message. It led Jadon Sancho to leave this message on Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter, this morning. Please don't believe everything you read. I will not allow people saying things that is completely untrue. I've conducted myself in training very well this week. I believe there are other reasons for this matter that I won't go into. I've been a scapegoat for a long time, which isn't fair. He goes on to talk about playing football with a smile, loving his coaches, loving the players, respecting everyone, loving the badge, and loving you supporters. But in the first paragraph, he takes a flamethrower to every single person except for the supporters. When you read this, is this a 23-year-old who is hitting rock bottom? Is this a guy screaming for help? Or is this maybe a little bit of a sign that the player's wrong, but there is an awful lot more wrong being done with the management at Manchester United if players feel like this is their only response?
I mean, this sounds very childish, right? It's like Ten Hag is saying you can't go out because you didn't clean your room, and he's like, I did clean my room. Like that whole line about I have conducted myself in training very well this week. It's like, what? Like, who says that even? Not even like a normal, something like a statement that you would make. It's like a direct response to what Ten Hag is saying. Is Ten Hag? I'm sure he was asked the question. I don't watch Ten Hag press conferences, but I'm assuming he was asked the question. I don't know if it was asked multiple times before he was like, look, here is the deal, kind of a deal, and said, yeah, he didn't practice well, so he's not in the squad. It is what it is, kind of a deal. Could he have said something more politically correct? Yes, he could probably say, you know, oh, it's a long season. Everybody's going to get their shots, blah, blah, blah. And then just like move on and be like, any more questions? Okay, then just get up and go. He could have done that, but it's like a message sent to the player. I don't know. We kind of like, you know, especially like somebody like Keane bitching about something like this kills me because he's the one who's talking about like, oh, people are too soft on players right now and stuff like that. I don't blame. I mean, we don't know what happens in practice. I mean, why would Ten Hag? I know Ten Hag didn't bring him in, so maybe, you know, he's not big on him anyway. But I mean, can he be worse than like Anthony? I don't know.
I guess that's my thing is does this have anything to do with the fact that he was the big money signing before his big money signing, who arguably has been a bigger flop because he's been given more of a leash and more of a run out by the manager and has really done nothing and is now, you know, in real hot water in Brazil with some of the legal problems that he has going on hanging over his head. Like, I guess my thing about it is does this speak more to Jadon Sancho possibly and most likely being a little bit of a diva and a whiner? Yeah. Anyone who knows, Pep wanted him to stay at City and to fight for his place and told him in preseason, there is a spot for you in this side at Manchester City. Fight for it. And he went to Dortmund for guaranteed minutes.
Yeah.
Because he didn't want to stay and fight. And then he got his minutes. And then as soon as there was time for a big money move, you know, he wanted Liverpool. I want Liverpool. I want Liverpool. And then he ran for the biggest payday and the highest wages. And he went to United. And it hasn't worked out since. Like, this is a kid that hasn't exactly made the best decisions along the way, career-wise, in my opinion. And doesn't exactly seem like one who wants to fight for it. So maybe it's on him. But I think when you look at, I don't think Ten Hag covered himself in glory and how he handled the Ronaldo stuff at all. Overall, I think he was okay at the end. He wasn't great. He basically made Harry Maguire a scapegoat when all the guy did was say and do all the right things for the club. I mean, he stripped him to the captaincy. He's made Bruno Fernandes captain, which makes me question his overall judgment. He almost ran Scott McTominay out of the club. And I'll tell you what, in 2 weeks, Scott McTominay is going to be their starting center back. So Johnny Evans and Harry Maguire don't have to play. And they're going to be lucky that he's still there because he's all they have left. Like, he's gotten nothing out of Anthony. He's almost ruined Jadon Sancho. Anthony Martial has done nothing but toil. He's got Eric Bailly training with the reserves, and he's running out 155-year-old Johnny Evans. Like, it doesn't scream confidence overall. And even the guys he's brought in, I don't feel have actually shined. So it's interesting. Like, I feel like he gets a lot of, maybe he gets some pass, maybe, because of how bad it was at the end for Ole. I don't know. It seems to me like his man management is much worse than his tactical management. But maybe I'm off here.
I think it's a combination. I mean, here's the thing. You know, somebody took a big dump in the middle of United, and they bring Ten Hag to clean it up. And they're like, hey, there's no cleaning supplies. They'll do what you can. So obviously, as he's trying to clean that up, there's shit everywhere. So, you know, like he has to deal with the Ronaldo situation, which was a bad move. He has to deal. I mean, I don't think he ever wanted Ronaldo. So I think maybe that's what it goes to, right? He's dealing with situations where maybe he has no control over, like things he wants done are not being done for him. He wants probably Maguire gone. He wanted Ronaldo initially gone. That was like a different ordeal for him to be able to handle. I don't think he's getting the backing of the owners when something like that happens. You're like, no, we're not going to sell him for 20. I guess you're stuck with him, for example, with Maguire or something like that. So I think there is the challenge of that. But the flip side of that goes back to what you're saying. Then if you're going to bring your own cleaning supplies, they better help clean the mess and not just make it worse. And I think, they spent a ton of money this offseason again. And you can argue that they are all big question marks. Maybe, I mean, it's too early in the season, but Mason Mount, I don't think Onana is a good goalkeeper. Not what they need. I think they were better off staying with De Gea. At least it would be some continuity.
And another one that he ran out.
Yeah.
I mean, he ran David De Gea out with basically disregard and any respect for a guy who'd been there for 15 years.
I think he wants to bring his own people in, but the problem is when you do that, you better make sure the people you're bringing in, when you blow it up and you're bringing your own people in, those guys have to be really good to kind of give you support for what you're trying to do. And I don't think he's had that. So it's kind of like, well, you don't know what you're doing either. And I think that's why there's way too many heads doing different things at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that's where the real concern is. If I'm a United fan, like if I'm your brother, my concern is we let him go out and pick 2 Ajax players. He brought us a 5'6" center back who is a walking red card, who puts in a few man of the match performances every once in a while with effort and determination, and also puts in such a stinker he needs to get subbed off at the at the 45-minute mark because he's got a yellow card and there's no chance he can get through a second half without a moronic rash challenge. A winger who arguably might be as bad as Pepe, and I didn't think a Premier League signing could be as bad as Pepe, okay? And Anthony might. 3 years from now, it'll be after the last day of the transfer window, and they'll be trying to find some taker in Turkey to see if they'll take Anthony off of their hands because it'll be their window still open. They'll subsidize his wages, and they'll just jettison him out. Or they'll find some Spanish club who's willing to have a women-beating piece of trash as part of their club. I wish Getafe could get the hell out of Europe, honestly, in my opinion. But that's a different topic for a different podcast. And I think you have to look at, sometimes it's not just about the players of his past that he's brought in, but what about the players of his past that he couldn't get over the line? Like, he couldn't convince a Netherlands player like Cody Gakpo to join them when he was supposedly the number 1 target. They couldn't get Gravenberch over the line when he was a guy. Yeah. And it starts to lay some foundation to why didn't Bayern Munich hire him when he supposedly was willing to leave Ajax and he was number 2? Because he was the number 2 at Bayern Munich.
Yep.
But why didn't they hire him and let him go to Ajax? Did they know that, yes, tactically he's really great, but when it comes to dealing with people and big personalities, I don't know that he looks to me like a guy who's easy to work with. And I think when you're at a club like United, you need the manager and upper management working together because there's no more Arsene Wenger's. There's no more Alex Ferguson's, right? There's no more guys who get carte blanche and just get to decide how they're going to handle it. So we went a little over this week. It's always what happens when you get to talk about the train wreck that is Manchester United in 2 different segments. But before we get out of here, we're going to, one of my favorite graphics I found on the internet was say no to international breaks. For me, I like to refer to these as the dreaded international break. Our friend and co-host Paul Bickler on the Monday podcast would tell you it's like a 2-week hiatus from football or a reason to go to a bachelor party in Montana.
I don't know which one is worse.
The bachelor party in Montana, I'm sure. But what do you do during the international breaks? Do you still continue to watch all the football? I know you still host the morning shows throughout the week, so you got to pay attention. What are you doing? What's your primary focus during the international breaks?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm going to watch Turkey. They do have one group game, and then they actually play against Endo in a friendly against Japan. But they're doing well, so kind of like, hey, let's see how that goes, kind of a watch. So I'll definitely follow Turkey and watch that game. As I work, I might catch a game here or there, but I don't make it it's not like, you know, the weekends where you kind of revolve your schedule around when the games are. This is more like the schedule is there. If game happens to fit, if it's on as I'm working or something like that, I'll keep an eye on it. But aside from Turkey's game, it's like, yeah, let's face it, when we watch most of these games, even when we watch our guys, you know, who play for our clubs, we're just watching so they don't get injured. I don't know if we care if they do extremely well or whatever. They're like, just don't get freaking injured kind of a deal. So it kind of like takes away from the overall deal. It's different than watching a World Cup or watching the Euros or something like that, where that is not a factor for the most part, right? You're just enjoying the tournaments. But yeah, I'll definitely be watching Turkey, at least like the importance game. And then rest of the time, obviously, yeah, we're going to do the morning show and everything like that. So you're going to keep an eye on the headlines, see what happens with Saudi League and who else they snatch in the last 3-4 days, blah, blah, blah. I can't wait till that freaking date is over. I had circled September 1st. Now I guess I had to delete that and circle September 7th. But yeah, once that is over, at least we can talk more tactics and stuff like that. And yeah, take a break, like Bickler says, but not in Montana, like Bickler does. So
yeah, I'll watch some of the United States just to get my blood pressure going and make sure that I'm still alive. Get me irritated. I'm sure I'll rant about it at some time soon. I agree with you. We were going to talk transfers tonight. We ran out of time, so I decided we'll shelve that. Bickler and I will come back with some transfer grades to wrap up the window. And like you've said, I guess it'll be actually when we can talk about it after the windows are all closed. Damn Saudi window.
Can I say, by the way, I hate the hypocrisy of even Klopp and everybody complaining about the Saudi League window closing late, but nobody has an issue with the Greek and the Turkish leagues and stuff closing late because they can dump Bayi, they can dump Ndombele, blah, blah, blah. Like the leftovers, they can dump it on them. But when it's somebody who has too much money and can take the ones that you don't want to get rid of, that's when it becomes a problem. It's just like,
hey, look, the hypocrisy of all of this is pretty real. And I think we could probably do a whole show on the transfers. You know, I think there's a little hypocrisy that everyone's all up in arms about the Saudi League and ruining football with all this money. But nobody had any problem over the last 5 years where the Premier League basically predominantly spent 60 to 70% more on average than every other major league in all of Europe, buying all the top talent. No one had a problem when they were just pillaging every good young player throughout Italy and Spain and stacking them up in reserves. And like I always joked last year when I made that comment that Bournemouth's payroll would be like the third highest weekly wage in Italy, like of any club. So, you know, we kind of got to get over ourselves. I think what Saudi's doing is different. If you want to talk about the way of life, if you want to talk about civil rights, if you want to talk about the league and what it stands for in the government, fine. But if it's just about pure football greed, this shit's been happening in every professional sports league all over the world. So they want to compete. How do you compete? Get the best players. How do you get the best players? Pay them more to come play in your league. This is sports 101, people. So let's get through Thursday the 7th. Hopefully that, like I said, that Saudi window will close. We'll close that hot, drafty desert air, and we'll just kind of forget about the Saudi League until January, of course, when they come back to buy all of our clubs and players. But really quickly, when we get back from the dreaded international break, always fun to know that Liverpool gets to start with the 7:30 a.m. match after the international break. Just what you want. Up against Wolves, which is a painful one in itself at Molineux. So that'll be interesting. What jumps out at you here? Maybe Brighton United, Newcastle Brentford. What's even West Ham City? What do you think is our match of the week that Bickler and I should focus on when we come back in 2 weeks?
I would say West Ham and City. I think we're going to find out a lot more about both of them, right? We're going to see if City is really vulnerable at times, and we're going to see if West Ham is as good as, can they stay up in that top of that, like table as we were looking earlier. United Brighton is more about, is Brighton going to take care of the wounded animal that is United? And we don't know. I mean, that's the thing. It's probably the worst time. I feel like, it seemed like West Ham, Tottenham, Liverpool is entering this, international break on a positive vibe. So it's nothing but positivity that's going to happen for 2 weeks. Whereas, with the Anthony deal, Sancho and stuff like that, nothing but drama is going to happen on the United side. That's the whole thing about these international breaks, is like how the momentum you go in with. So it'll be interesting to see how much more drama we get on that side and if Brighton takes advantage of it. But I think in terms of pure matchup, I nominate West Ham and City for you guys.
Yeah, I'm thinking West Ham City as well. The one that I think could be really intriguing, one that we'll probably talk a bit about because we always, focus on 2 or 3 there in that opening segment. I think will be Brentford Newcastle. I think, this Brentford side is really interesting. We talk about Thomas Frank and what he does with that team and the way they play, their tactics, that they don't give up tough shots, which basically makes them very hard to score against. You made the comment earlier. They're doing something without Ivan Toney, which is outscore themselves, which is kind of impressive. Wisa looks good. Shade looks good. And Wemo looks like a revelation. He just can't stop scoring and scoring big goals, and confident goals. That turn he has in extra time to go one-on-one with the keeper and slot him down. Yeah. It is a world-class turn. He takes the ball in stride, turns the defender. I mean, literally, the guy's probably still having nightmares about it right now. That's a great move by him. So it'll be interesting. Thank you for filling in.
Oh, my pleasure.
I'm going to say we're going to just remind everyone now, please, if you haven't already, go to the YouTube page, give it a subscribe, smash the like button, share this podcast / Premier League show with your friends. Don't forget to tune in tonight or at 8 p.m. Eastern every Monday night for our live flagship podcast of the week, our American Scouser podcast. Been going on for years now. I think we are 2.5 to 3 years without missing a Monday night.
Not missing it. Yeah. I mean, we've probably been on air for like 4 or 5 years now, but in terms of consistency, yeah, it's been like 2.5 years, I think, where it's like we talk to people every Monday night.
Yeah, really, really impressive. Appreciate all of our viewers who come in every week and show up every week with their comments. We have our fantasy show on Thursday at 9 p.m. We also have our Thursday podcast. We have our Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning coffee shows at 10 Eastern, 9 Central. And we come to you live 1 hour before every match with our pre-match shows. And again, immediately following the final whistle with our post-match analysis, which are becoming to be really fun shows, especially when someone gets it way right or way wrong in the pre-match. It makes the post-match so much more entertaining. So for all of us at American Scouser TV, thank you for viewing. Thank you for checking out the Premier League show. I am Gally from Massachusetts, joined by Timucin from Chicago. We will see you all next week when we are back with another Premier League show. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.